Charged with DWI and felony evading arrest, a local student is fighting to clear her name. She claims a Bexar County deputy arrested her for a crime she didn't commit. Tonight, she's suing Bexar County to keep it from happening to others.
I was driving along from my boyfriend's house when the officer was trailing behind me.
Just after midnight on a cold December night in 2014, an 18-year-old girl was driving home on Bandera Road.
I was driving the speed limit, maybe a couple miles over, when she pulled me over.
We're not showing her face or using her name to protect her identity, so we'll call her Sarah. She was a couple miles from home when Bexar County Sheriff's Deputy Melissa Busby pulled her over.
She pulled me over and I was sitting there and she hadn't approached my car in about 2 minutes. So I was like, hey, what the heck is going on?
Sarah had never been pulled over before and realized she was still partially in the road.
So I put my blinker on to the right, turned into this gas station, pulled up so there was enough room for both of us. Rolled down my window. She said, okay, you need to get out of your car. So I got out of my car.
Sarah says what happened next was a living nightmare.
She said, put your hands behind your back and walk towards me while my hands were behind my back. And then she immediately put me in handcuffs, put me on the hood of her truck and said, have you been drinking tonight? Asked me a bunch of questions. And I said, no, of course not. I would never drink and drive.
The deputy performed a field sobriety test on Sarah, but midway through stopped the test. In her report, Deputy Busby says Sarah nearly fell over and stopped the test for the safety of Sarah. Sarah says she hadn't had anything to drink and begged the deputy to give her a breathalyzer or blood test.
She said because I was under the age of 21, she didn't have to give me a blood alcohol test. She didn't have to breathalyze me. She didn't have to do any of that.
The deputy took her downtown where Sarah was not only booked for DWI, but for felony evading arrest for driving to the gas station. Immediately after bonding out of jail, about 6 hours after her arrest, Sarah went to a private lab to get a drug and alcohol test, which showed she had nothing in her system.
All you got to do is look her in the eye and you know that she's a good and truthful person. She's a straight-A student in college. She doesn't even drink. She has a reputation for being the designated driver.
Dan Packard represents Sarah in a civil lawsuit against Bexar County and Deputy Busby for false arrest.
I have spoken to a number of attorneys in the area who say this happens all the time, that there are people who do not know the system, who do not know that there is a financial incentive for the officers to do this, and so they just plead and get on with their life, and then they've got an alcohol-related offense on their record when it isn't true.
Packard says these arrests stem from a federal program called STEP, or Selective Traffic Enforcement Program. Each year, the Bexar County Sheriff's Office applies for federal grant money through the STEP program.
Well, it's a program that offers a financial incentive to the county if they make a certain number of alcohol-related arrests. And so if you're the police officer and you know that you're going to be viewed favorably and you're going to get the favorable shifts, you're going to get the good overtime pay, as long as you make a lot of alcohol-related arrests, then that's going to provide an incentive for you to push the line, and in this case, cross it in a big way.
Packard explains what he calls the main problem with the STEP program.
And one of the interesting things about the STEP program is that the goals are measured on arrests, not convictions. And so it doesn't matter if all these arrests get thrown out, as long as they have the arrest, then they get the points, which allows them to stay in the system and get the money.
The charges against Sarah have been dropped, but she's hoping to keep anyone else from growing through her nightmare.
I just couldn't stand the fact that she could get away with this.
We reached out to the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, but they would not comment due to the lawsuit. Attempts to reach Deputy Busby went unanswered. And tonight, the case is in the hands of a judge who will decide if it goes to trial. In the meantime, if something like this has happened to you, you can get in touch with Dan Packard by going to our website, news4sa.com.